Out of all of the scariest animals on this planet, a squirrel would probably rank pretty low on the list. With their bushy tails and small bodies, a squirrel isn't what you'd call an intimidating beast. However, if you were to ask one man in Germany, he'd tell you a different story. Police in Germany were blown away when they received this bizarre phone call from a terrified man who swore he was being followed by a squirrel. It was a typical day for the German police at the Karlsruhe Police Department. As officers, the police in the department believed that they had seen and heard everything. However, all of that changed when they heard this crazy story. It was a Thursday morning when police at the Karlsruhe department received an unusual phone call. A man had called in an emergency and was desperate for police intervention. However, police wanted to know what the problem was in more detail. The man who called in was a nervous wreck on the phone and was persistent about his issue. It seems that the man was being followed around by an animal. The police immediately wanted to know what sort of animal was trying to hunt him down. The police department instantly began to worry about the man and the situation he was in. After all, if a man was calling in a troublesome animal, it would have to be a pretty dire situation. The officers waited for the man to mention a wolf or a bear or something of the sort. Finally, the man alerted the police to the actual situation at hand. "Help, I'm being followed by a squirrel." That is what officers heard on the other line. Once the officers were alerted to the situation and where it was taking place, they quickly dispatched a patrol car. The patrol car headed over to the man, and the officers were shocked by what they saw when they arrived. Indeed, it seems the man that called in the issue was actually being chased around by a squirrel. The police officers quickly got out of the vehicle and began to intervene in the situation. Luckily, the squirrel was growing tired at this point. Eventually, the poor squirrel lost its stamina and collapsed onto the ground. The police officers leaped into action and placed the squirrel inside of a box. Officers then transported the little squirrel over to a rescue center. The officers assumed the tiny squirrel had lost its mother, which would explain why it was all alone. Since it had lost its mother, the squirrel seemed to have found a wonderful replacement in the man it was chasing around. It often happens that squirrels which have lost their mothers look for a replacement and then focus their efforts on one person. Police spokeswoman Christina Krentz told The Guardian. She told The Guardian that the experience can be pretty scary. "He was certainly feeling a bit threatened," Christina Krentz told The Guardian. Thankfully, the officers weren't too frightened of the squirrel. They even decided on a wonderful name for it. The police officers that rescued the tiny squirrel decided to name it Carl Friedrich. The police department also decided to officially name the squirrel their mascot. Officers seem to have really grown fond of the squirrel. "A squirrel will be our new mascot. It will be christened Carl Friedrich," said the police write-up. The squirrel has fallen asleep in fright. The officers were immediately in love with their new buddy. For a while, the squirrel remained in police custody. The officers greatly enjoyed the squirrel's company. After all, it's not every day you get to enjoy the company of a sweet and cuddly animal in the line of duty. Soon help arrived in the form of a wildlife rescue team. They arrived at the police station and were ready to take little Carl Friedrich with them. Since she had no mother, she'd need some extra care. The police department was sad to see little Carl Friedrich go. However, they were happy he would be receiving all of the best care from now on. "We wish the little one all the best," authorities wrote. Surprisingly enough, Carl Friedrich wasn't the first squirrel the police department had to watch go. In fact, there were already 2 other squirrels in police custody that day. The other squirrels were brought in for similar reasons. The other squirrels were brought into the police station because they were discovered all alone outside. Although the situations were similar, Carl Friedrich's situation was the only one that needed police intervention. The police department has been receiving updates on Carl Friedrich's well-being. The rescue center that has been watching over him stated he is doing very well. Everyone has been happy to hear that. Finally, the case of the wild attacking squirrel has been closed. The squirrel is in a great new environment being cared for, and the man who was so viciously attacked can now sleep peacefully, knowing the squirrel is no longer out there. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with your friends and family. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next.